we are in step number 3 of the yarn braid style. In this step, I will be sharing with you 6 of my best tips, tricks, and advice for doing your yarn braids. Tip number 1, beauty is not pain, preventing hair loss and alopecia. If you or if anyone you know suffers from hair loss or alopecia, this is mainly specifically because they wear hairstyles that are extremely too tight. If your braids or twist or simply your weave is installed too tightly on your hair, this leads to hair loss. By putting so much tension and stress on your hair, it hurts your scalp and your hair eventually starts to break. When your yarn braids are installed and you have issues laying on your hair, or you even have to take pain medication to deal with the pain, that's because your braids are braided entirely too tight. Make sure they are installed comfortably since you will be wearing this style for a while. So in the case of beauty is pain, that is not true because beauty is not pain. Tip number 2, braiding close to your roots. When you are braiding your hair, you want to make sure that the yarn you are braided with is installed as closely to your roots as possible. This ensures that your style will look more fresh and that the braids will last a lot longer. So if you notice that as you are braiding your hair, the yarn seems to slide down your hair or start further away from your roots, simply take down the braid and restart it to make sure that it is installed properly. The difference between braids being braided close to your roots and not so close will look like the difference between a style that has been freshly installed versus a style that is probably a couple of weeks old. Tip number 3, brick parting. When you are parting and braiding your yarn braids, you want to make sure that it lays in the fashion that you would as if you were building, say, a brick wall for a home. So when you lay bricks down for a home, usually your layer consists of a brick and then another brick is put closely against that brick as well. When you lay the rest of the bricks on top, you make sure to lay them on top to where the crease is. When you are braiding your hair, by doing this brick parting or brick laying style, this ensures that more scalp is covered throughout your style. The braids are still neatly parted even though they are in brick sections. By putting them in brick parting laying types of fashion, this ensures that more of your scalp is covered for your look. Tip number 4, cutting and knotting your yarn braids. When you are doing your yarn braids, you want to make sure that you snip any pieces of yarn that sticks out from your braids. This happens simply because some of your pieces of yarn won't be identically perfectly matching in length. So sometimes you may have a little bit of thread that may stick out through your braid. Go ahead and take your scissors and clip those pieces. Also, when you near the ends of your yarn braids, you want to make sure that you grab the ends, all of the yarn that's at the end, and tie it into a complete tight knot. And then you will trim off any thread that hangs below the knot of your yarn braid. Tip number 5, using acrylic yarn to do your yarn braids. When you are doing your yarn braids, it is a must that you use acrylic yarn because this yarn is the best for your style. Acrylic yarn is not so absorbent, so when you are braiding your hair, it will not take moisture from your hair, leaving your hair dry and or brittle. If you use cotton yarn or wool yarn, it will absorb as much moisture from your hair as it possibly can, and it would leave your hair very vulnerable in your style. Also, cotton yarn and wool yarn starts to lock on your hair. So as time goes on, if you have cotton and wool in your hair, it will be extremely hard and almost impossible to remove your yarn braids. So make sure that when you're doing your yarn braids, you're only using 100% acrylic yarn to do so. Last and certainly not least, tip number 6, practice. When you are doing your yarn braids, it is a must that you practice at doing your hair. Especially if you are a beginner, everything is new, all the way down to the techniques and the different ways to maintain your style. So just know, and like I always say, your first time is usually your worst time. Don't expect yourself to be 100% excellent at doing your yarn braids if this is your first try. Your first try probably won't be as successful, but if you continue to practice the tips, you will get better at doing your yarn braids. Just know in order to be perfect, you must practice. So please do not be discouraged. or give up if it doesn't come out the way that you would like. Simply restart and try again to get the desired look. So there you have it, 6 of my best tips, tricks, and advice for doing your yarn braid style. In the next step, step number 4, I will show you how to do your yarn braids in a rush.